Welcome to the webinar, Doing Your Homework, the Pre-Campaign Feasibility Study. I'm Jody Davis-Gempler, Director of Development for the Boys and Girls Clubs of Ada County, located in Boise, Idaho. Thanks for joining me today, and thanks to the Boys and Girls Clubs of America for allowing me to share what I've learned about feasibility studies over the years. I really believe that a well-done and well-prepared for feasibility study is a key component to a successful capital campaign. I believe that because I've been fundraising a long time, 17 years. I've been involved in 5 major capital campaigns at 3 hospitals, a capital campaign at a university, and one at the Boys and Girls Clubs. With 7 campaigns under my belt, I felt the bliss of success and the pain of failure. My goal for this webinar is to teach you how to best prepare for your feasibility study, how to make it worth the money, and how to truly be able to use it as a tool for your campaign success. All right, let's jump right in. I'm going to assume that most of you know what a feasibility study is, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide. But for those of you who don't, I've prepared a slide with what I believe are the essentials. A feasibility study tests whether you can really achieve your capital campaign goals. It is the ultimate reality check. So in a feasibility study, you often hire outside counsel who will not only assess your organization from multiple angles, but also will conduct a series of interviews with your board and donors, asking them their thoughts on your reputation, giving areas that you hope the campaign can raise money for. Consultants can help determine if volunteers are willing to help and if your donors are willing to give. They also lay the groundwork for education and cultivation among your very best donors and volunteers. Consultants also evaluate competition and other factors that might affect your ability to succeed. A feasibility study will also assess your gift chart and top donors. Later in this presentation, we're really going to dive into that because it's important that you get your gift chart right. If a feasibility study is well done, the consultant can tell you with some degree of objectivity whether you should proceed and how much you can likely raise. On this slide, I also want to point out the verbiage of working goal. You'll see that in quotations in the middle of the page. At this stage in the campaign, you always want to have a working goal versus a set goal. You don't want to set a goal until you know you can achieve it. There are no failed campaigns here. You call it your working goal at this point. Your working goal can be changed based on feedback you get from the feasibility study and the early phases of your campaign. So now that we know what a feasibility study is, let's move on. Feasibility studies are really important. I've mentioned I've been involved in several, some highly successful and some not so much. Often we learn our biggest lessons in our moments of failure, and here's mine. I was at Providence Milwaukee Hospital, a small community hospital just outside Portland, Oregon. I was the development director at the time, and I remembered the day when the CEO came frantically in my office. She said, in order to save the maternity ward, we need to raise $3 million in endowment. And if the money doesn't get raised, I'm going to need to shut down the maternity ward to the entire community. Okay, so if that's not a case, I don't know what is. She was one of those passionate leaders that could sell you your own shoes. You know the type. Anyway, she had us all motivated and excited. She wanted us to just jump right in and raise the money, and she had the backing of the entire board of the directors. They agreed with her. So the executive director and I jumped right in. We planned the campaign, we met with all the key donors, we got the board pumped, and we decided not to do a feasibility study. We didn't test our campaign plan or marketing messages with a feasibility study. We just assumed that if the hospital needed support, the donors would come. We jumped in for our case for support and our campaign materials, and guess what? We failed. The maternity ward at Providence Milwaukee Hospital is closed to this day. So who's been there? Who's made this mistake or have felt pressed to make this mistake? Your president, CEO, or board is insisting your campaign needs to happen, and they're so confident that it can. That's all they can hear. They don't understand the importance of a feasibility study, and no matter what you tell them, All they hear is, we got this, we're going to raise millions. So don't let your board members or your CEO be the guy from Dumb and Dumber. You really need to know if there's a chance. Don't just assume, even if your case is beyond compelling. And I wanted to show you this video clip, but it's not working well. And so I'm sure most of you have seen it, but he's wondering what his chances are of hooking up with this woman. And she says, not good. And he says, what, like 1 out of 100? And she says, no, more like 1 out of 1,000,000. And all he hears is, so you're telling me there's a chance. So again, you really need to know what your chances are and not just assume that you got this. So if you're like me, you probably like the idea of doing a feasibility study. However, it's so expensive, and it is. Feasibility studies done by a consultant can cost your organization around $25,000 or more. Now, while that seems like a lot of money, a $25,000 investment far outweighs the cost of a failed campaign. If you really believe in your goals and your vision for your organization's future, this is an investment you can't afford not to make. To get the most out of your investment, you need to do your homework before you hire a consultant to do your feasibility study. If you're going to spend this kind of money, you want your feasibility study to be a tool to help you succeed in your campaign, not used as a notice that something's wrong with your organization or your board or your processes. Correct what's broken before you even start your feasibility study. Get it right the first time. Get the most out of your feasibility study. Okay, let's see how to do this. Step 1 is to do the math. Build a chart of gifts, or what's known as a gift pyramid. A gift chart is a tool used to determine how many gifts and prospects you will need to raise a specific amount of money. These charts are often used for capital campaigns, but can also be used for major gift fundraising. This chart helps you see if you have enough potential donors at various levels to meet your goals. There are resources all over the internet that teach you how to build these charts. Just Google it. There's also sample charts at bgca.net that even will self-calculate so you don't have to do the math. I know a lot of us went into fundraising because we're great mathematicians, right? So once you do this, you'll be surprised to learn that most fundraising campaigns require one gift that totals 15 to 25% of the total goal. This one gift sets the bar and others give in proportion to it. So you can see on the first line here of my chart, for my campaigns to be successful, I need one gift of $700,000, which is 20% of my goal. Your campaign does not start until you get this lead gift. And I know waiting for this gift can be painful. When we were doing our campaign, I must have told our board members a million times, no, we're not in a campaign until we get a $700,000 gift. It's not responsible or ethical to take lower gift levels until you know your campaign is viable. In most campaigns, the top 10 gifts will comprise at least half the goal. So you can see this is almost adding to 10, and it's 50% of my goal. Just with my goal was 3.5 million, and you can see that. So if you can raise 10 gifts that will get you to the halfway mark, the rest of the campaign usually falls into place. This formula is very important, so don't underestimate it. Campaigns live and die by this formula. So let's dive into the gift chart in more detail. So after you've made your gift chart, which you found by Googling or contacting BGCA, you need to look at who could potentially give these gifts. You need 3 viable prospects for each of the top 10 gifts that you need. The general rule of thumb is that you will need to ask 3 people to get one gift. For example, if you need one gift of $700,000, you will need to find 3 donors who could potentially give to you at this level. So you can see in line 1, I need one gift of $700,000 or more. So I need 3 prospects. And if you look to the far right, you can see I have 3 people listed: Ernie, Mary, and Alex. And by the way, these are fake names. Brad Pitt did not actually give us $100,000. The next level down, you can see I need 2 gifts of $250,000. So you're going to need 6 prospects. So you take the number of gifts needed and multiply by 3. And you can do this for your entire gift chart. but mainly focusing on those top 10 donors. You can determine if your campaign will succeed or fail based on people making gifts at these levels. There's a prospect grid on the far right in your handout section. If you go to the far right screen, you can see the handout section, and it says prospect grid. The very first thing that I did with my board and executive director before we even started our campaign in our early planning process, is we took our database and we plotted all of our donors out on this grid, from who's hot, who's not quite ready yet, who has money but they're not involved. You'll see when you do this exercise. It's a great exercise to do with your board. If you don't have people that can fill these gift levels yet, you need to reevaluate your goal or spend more time cultivating donors who can make gifts at that level. And ideally, these prospects are people that you know, not Bill Gates or Oprah, for example. And I don't know why, but every campaign I've ever been involved with, someone suggested, well, just contact Bill Gates. And I just laugh, but they're serious. So you want to fill real names into your table of gifts. You should have some point of contact with the prospects on your list. I'm not saying they all need to be your organization's best friends at this time, but you do need at least some ability to connect with them. So once this is done and your names are filled in, these are some of the people who should be included in your feasibility study. One mistake organizations make is giving feasibility consultants nice people and nice board members to interview, but you don't want to do that. You want to interview people who can actually give to your campaign. You don't need every one of them, but you definitely need some of them. So use that grid and make sure you're interviewing those people. Now, in most communities, there's only a few people who can make these kind of gifts. There was a school in Montana that needed to raise $1 million. It was a small community, and when the board made a list of all former donors, potential donors, teachers, parents, grandparents, and local foundations, they had a list of only 350 people. Well, how can you raise $1 million from only 350 people? Well, it comes down to the fact that you need a few extraordinary gifts from a handful of exceptional people. Because the board knew there were only a few people in town who could make these types of gifts, they knew there were 4 people who could give to the campaign at that level, and at least 2 of them had to say yes. If these people would not give at the $250 or $250,000 level, the board knew they couldn't be successful and that they would have to abandon their campaign plans. So you can see the power in this gift chart and how important it is. Okay, I put this slide in here because I've had a board member say this for every campaign I've ever been a part of. And don't fall for it. Here it is. Some board member will raise their hand while you're giving your presentation and they'll say, well, what if 100 people give us, or what if 1,000 people give us $1,000? That's $1 million. That will get us to our lead gift. It sounds so logical, right? But trust me, it does not work. Don't go there. You need to get big gifts first. Sometimes the people who suggest what I just said are your most powerful board members. Don't cave. Stick to your gift chart. Stick to the fact that 10 gifts usually make up 50% of your campaign goal. All right, this is my capital campaign truth. This slide is actually important to me. I looked at this picture every single day of the last campaign I ran, and it grounded me to the belief that you only take big gifts first. It's the old story about if you put sand in before rocks, the rocks won't fit. But if you put the rocks in first, the sand will easily go around it. So sometimes you'll be tempted to take small gift first, which I'm calling the sand. Don't. For a campaign to work, you need big gifts first. Focus on your big donors. Well, what if we don't know our top donors yet? What if we can't fill that gift chart out yet? Well, you may need to build a relationship with those top donors and or add them to your board, or maybe seek them out for a campaign role, do some political mapping. Get the right people passionate about what you do. If you have to delay the start of your campaign by 6 months to get the right people on board, do it. Your campaign will thank you in the end, and you'll be far more successful. Don't just hope for the best, get it right the first time. The conversation about how to engage the right donors might also be a good time to ask your organization, are we even ready for a capital campaign yet? There are hundreds of self-surveys you can do with your board and staff. Since this presentation isn't, are you ready for a capital campaign, I'm going to skip over all that work today, but it's still really important for you to do. And I actually have a handout on this topic that you can download again at the far right that says, are you ready for a capital campaign? It's a series of questions to walk through with your executive director and your board at your resource development committee or with your full board and really dive into look. It'll be very helpful for you. So you're ready. You have your gift chart, you have your top prospects, your board members are chosen to be interviewed, and you've decided to take the plunge and hire a feasibility consultant. I provided some handouts on the right about what they're probably going to ask you for in terms of the data from your organization, and you can find that again in the handout section. And I also highlighted the profile categories of the individuals they're likely going to ask, a cross-section of people, so you can download that as well. You should know a feasibility study normally takes about 12 weeks, sometimes more, sometimes less, depending on the size of your organization. And then finally, don't you want to know what these consultants are going to be asking your best donors? Well, I'm going to tell you, and these next few slides are going to go kind of fast. So consultants are going to ask about your brand. They're going to ask how well known are you? They're going to ask if your organization is respected, and they're going to get a general sense of the public opinion surrounding your organization. Consultants are going to also ask about the reputation of the board and your executive director and the perceived leadership capacity to pull off a campaign. They're also going to look at staffing resources to see if you have the staffing to pull off a campaign in addition to your regular fundraising. Consultants are going to ask you about the economic climate of your area and if your campaign goal is attainable. So they'll be looking at all sorts of different factors. Consultants will spend a lot of time asking what the donor thinks about what would aid fundraising efforts, what would help, and they'll also ask about their willingness to volunteer or provide leadership. They'll ask who in the community they think needs to be involved in your campaign for it to be successful. So a lot of consultants will spend time asking what the donor thinks. And this is the slide where consultants can earn their weight in gold. They'll determine if your gift chart is realistic and if a donor would be willing to give at your top giving levels. They will also ask about aspects of your draft case statement to see what resonates best or perhaps something that's uncomfortable for them. Now on a consultant's final report, you're going to get a summary of what was said, but you will not get specific information on any one donor. The consultant will not share this information with you. They tell the donor that their responses are anonymous and private. So you will learn how many will give at certain levels, but not the exact name. So you'll learn that one person might be willing to give you $500,000, but they're not going to tell you who that person is. And I know you are thinking, oh, that's frustrating, that's a bummer. But the truth is, these people deserve to be cultivated by you and involved by you and asked by you. So I think that's fair. All right, so can you envision your donor wall? It seems like this is something you do at the end of your campaign, but really think about doing it at the beginning of your campaign. And I hope I've helped make the case for properly preparing for your feasibility study and that the handouts are helpful for you. And I hope you consider to invest in doing one. I know that it's tempting to skip over this critical part of a campaign, but I really believe it's worth the money. Some consultants will actually let you be a part of the process. You can actually go on the calls with them. Some prefer that it's completely anonymous. So You can find a consultant that meets your needs and suits what's comfortable for you. And BGCA also has a lot of great resources about how to find a consultant, and your director of development that oversees your area will also have a lot of really good insights to help you. You don't want a failed campaign under your leadership. You want a great campaign that will take you to new levels of leadership and help you serve more kids. So good luck, everyone, and please feel free to call me personally if you have questions. I'll also take questions now if you have any. Anyone have questions? How do you go about finding how do you go about finding a consultant? I would contact your director of organizational development or your director of development. Yours is Mary Ann Pacala. She's awesome and she can help you find a good one. Also, you could put it out on the Facebook. There's a resource development Facebook page, and with directors of development all around the nation who probably actually worked with feasibility consultants, so they can help guide you that way. And then also in almost every community, there's a nonprofit consortium that will have recommendations for consultants. The next question, have you worked with local foundations to raise money? Yeah, we work with local foundations to raise money. If you're talking about local foundations to raise money for feasibility studies, there are some that will do that. But foundations have been a critical component to all of our fundraising. And I'm not sure if I answered your question correctly, Jude, so feel free to call me offline or email me for more if I miss the boat on that one. Can you please send out this document you shared today? Absolutely. Everything is to the right of your screen called handouts, and you should be able to download them right now. And I believe that Heather is going to send anyone that attended all the materials as well. Jessica asks, what is the typical cost of paying for a feasibility study? Okay, a typical cost is about $25,000, and I'm sure that is painful for everyone. It is. It's very expensive. But like I said, I do believe it's worth it, and you can find a consultant that will work with you. And you can find one that's comfortable, and they're not all 25,000, but that tends to be the average price. Any other questions? Some people have asked if you can run your own feasibility study, and you can, but if you are new to fundraising and your executive director is new to fundraising, I absolutely would not go down that road. You should work with someone who's done feasibilities before, an experienced consultant. But if you've been doing fundraising a long time, you might be able to. Colleen and I ran our feasibility study for the Boys and Girls Club, and we had a great time doing it. It was a really powerful experience. But again, we both have extensive experience, so I don't recommend it for everyone. Heather, are we done?
Yes, it looks like there isn't any more questions, so we can go ahead and wrap it up.
Perfect. Thank you, everyone.
Yes, thank you all for attending. This presentation as well as the handouts will be sent out in a follow-up email within the next couple of minutes, and that should come to you shortly. Thank you, Jody.
Thank you, Heather.